This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
I always tell people, have a song. I call it the one song. Have your one song that you could use, that you feel comfortable with, and it doesn't have to be the whole thing. For me, it's Lean on Me. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Like, you don't even need more than that.
This is the Heart of Hospice podcast with Helen Bauer. My guest today is Bev Foster, the founder of Music Care by Room 217. They're working to make it easy for caregivers to use music confidently and effectively every day. Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, the Heart of Hospice is here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care.
The sponsor for today's episode is the Death Deck. The Death Deck is a card game and conversation tool that uses humor to create lively conversations about a topic that impacts us all, death. The Death Deck's goal is to normalize conversations on death and dying. The Death Deck also features the EOL deck, or End of Life deck. Designed for use with individuals who may be approaching end of life, the EOL deck digs deep into legacy building and end-of-life preferences. Visit thedeathdeck.com to order your decks today. Now, here's today's episode.
This lady is beautiful inside and out. She's got a spirit for the music that she is composing and singing, and you're going to get to hear some of it. So Bev Foster is with me today. She's the founder and executive director of the Room 217 Foundation. It's a Canadian health arts social enterprise that uses music to improve the care experience. The goal of Room 217's innovative care approach is to make music more integrated in care settings and personal care plans. Bev speaks and writes on the power of music, especially in life-limiting situations. Her passion for music enhancing quality of life and care is contagious. So you are getting ready to be exposed to the contagion of her enthusiasm and passion. Bev is going to share the story of how music has affected the death story of her dad, how it supported her family when her dad was dying, and the effects it has had on her and her work. She's going to talk to you about her belief that music can fill shape and create sacred spaces. It's amazing. She's going to be offering some ideas on the ways care teams can provide music interventions, and she's going to tell how the nonprofit foundation Room 217 was created and how they chose the name. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be sort of dazzled, because Bev's also going to share some of her music with us. And you're going to find, maybe like me, that the tears come very quickly for you. Maybe some overflow there. So here is my interview with Bev Foster of Music Care by Room 217. Bev, it's so great to talk to you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Helen. I'm pleased to be here.
Well, we're going to start off with a personal question that's not on our list. We didn't prep for this, so it's a surprise for you, but it'll just help us to get to know each other a little bit, help our listeners get to know you. Your thing is music. It's your passion. It's your gift. You use it. It has purpose for your work every day. And so I would ask you, what music would be on your playlist, if you have one, for the end of your life?
Well, that's a good one. I have given this some thought, actually. And believe it or not, I actually already have a celebration of life already kind of outlined with specific music. And I love a lot of music. I love a lot of classical music. So I have a little bit of Brahms from his Requiem on that list. And some of our own Room 217 music, which I love the Jewish album, for example. I'm not personally Jewish, but I love the music. And I think it would really wrap me warmly in my final days. I love contemporary worship, so I love a song called When It's All Been Said and Done by Rob and Mark. It's one of my very favorite songs. It's going to be sung at my funeral, but I want to be listening to that as I die. I love some of the songs I've written myself, to be honest, mostly because they express, I write music out of process and what I process in life. So I think I would want to have a couple of those songs on there. So a good smattering of various styles, I would say.
I like that. A variety.
Well, yeah, songs that have spoken to me through my life. I think a lot of times at end of life, people want things they know. That's not always the case, and sometimes you'll use new music or unfamiliar music for certain reasons, but we know that preferential music is usually the most effective music when you're using music therapeutically or for healing. I think that was a great surprise question, Helen.
Thank you.
I have given it some thought, and to be honest, kind of go back to those things every year or two, and is this still what I want? The other thing, like for me, playlist is one thing, but the live music at a celebration of life would be important too. Who's actually doing the music? So I've actually indicated who I want in the choir and who I want leading the choir and who I want leading the band. And my own kids are involved, and some of my nieces and nephews and some of my former students. So, and some of them know they've been asked, and some of them it'll be a bit of a surprise.
Last minute, guess what?
Yeah, but interestingly enough, often I'm asked to play at funerals or come in live when somebody's like dying. And it's such an honor and a privilege. That's how I see it.
Oh, yeah.
To be able to express, because what music does really is helps us express, right? And it whether you're a singer, it doesn't really matter. Like I think about, okay, we're jumping in, Helen, we're so jumping in, but I'm thinking about when my grandma was passing away, and my mom and my two sisters were around her bedside. And my mom's an only child, and she's not a singer. She loves music, but she's not a singer. And she's not really she's not a big talker. She's a great listener. And I remember Wind Beneath My Wings coming on. It was our Room 217 music we were playing, and that song came out. And I just remember her holding Nan's hand and expressed her love to her mom without singing. She let the song do it. And I think that's why playlists or thinking about the live music you want at your memorial is so important to think ahead of time. It really helps people with the story you want to tell. I also know people who just want to have a real party at their celebration of life, right? And play all their favorite sort of songs from their teenage years. So, it's a great starting question, and it really gets the ball rolling in terms of the topic around music and end of life today. Thanks for the question.
Sure. I love it. So I have to tell you, when I read your bio and looked at your website, I thought, man, I have never been so intimidated musically than now reading this, because your credentials and your education and your skill and everything that you've done is so amazing. Tell my listeners about your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing these days.
Yeah, well, Mom says I started playing the piano when I was 2. Of course I can't remember, but grew up in a musical family, was really plugged into my church. Had a phenomenal school, like high school, music program, which was super influential in my life, and a great piano teacher. So with all of that, I chose to go into music. I really wanted to teach, though, as much as I love to perform, and I still perform, but I love the interaction. I especially like when people learn about music. And so I've been a community musician, which means I've been a music educator in elementary and secondary schools. I have had my own studio, my teaching studio in my home. Always been plugged into my church. I'm still a musician. I haven't sort of let that go. Keep my chops up, I guess you could say. I'm also very much a family person. My husband and I have 4 adult children with very young grandchildren, so 4 of those. But I come from a large family, and we value family. And I'm also currently I caregive my mom along with my siblings, and we have one of our adult children has a very serious illness, which is a very daily thing for us. So in terms of the background, how I got here, my dad was dying. This was just over 20 years ago now. And the 6 of us and my mom were around his bedside singing his favorite songs. As he was subcutaneously morphined, he began to sing along with us. And I, with all the choral work I've done, with all the work I've done, I've never heard a sound generated like that ever for singing. And it really impacted me. It just came from this deep, deep place. And my dad died shortly after that, although the music was so powerful for all of us. Like, it connected my siblings and I, and it gave us comfort, but we could see how it connected us to Dad and gave him comfort. It was just really quite special, actually. Something we all know was just this sacred space, right? That we could be around him and we could share this way. And when I left that night, Helen, Dad had been in a large hospital in Toronto for 100 nights through his illness. This was a small rural hospital close to where we live. And not once had he been offered music. Mm. And this is not, I'm not dissing this system. That's not what this is. It's an observation. And when you're in it as a family caregiver, and I had 4 young kids, and you're running, supporting Mom. My grandma was sort of dying of dementia at the same time. So, it was just but upon reflection, I went, wow, nobody offered us music. And it was probably the most meaningful thing that we could do as a family at the very end. We were gifted that. Why? Like, do people just not get the power of music in living and dying especially? Or I don't know, I didn't know. Like, I actually really didn't know. That was my first question. It was an honest question. But the other part was, do they not have the tools? Because that's possible. They just don't have actually great tools to give families like ours. And we were a fairly resourceful family, but we could have missed it. It's interesting. Those were the questions I had when I left my dad for the last time. And basically, what's happened since 2002, I couldn't start right away because I was committed to some other things, but I was really curious to answer those questions. And by 2004, 2005, I could sort of give more time to it. And we created some palliative care music. I'll just call it that. It was familiar music. We chose, I did some research, and you can use different kinds of music. But I'm really interested in the psychosocial and spiritual care. And it seems to me, like I referenced at the very beginning, the music that's familiar to you is the most powerful. However, having said that, I also knew that what I experienced with Dad was that it needed to be produced just a little bit differently in train with what was going on with the breath, which, as slows down. When you're sitting vigil for us, it was 4 days of sitting vigil, that you just got this space to fill too in a clinic. He was in a hospital. He wasn't in a hospice. He was in a hospital. So there's still this sort of clinical space. You're in a bit of a bubble, like all the beeps and stuff are happening out there, but still you're in this room. And I guess I just wanted to figure out, how can we fill the room with beauty and peace for everybody in the circle of care, not just Dad, but all of us waiting and doing what we're doing, doing all those things you do at the end of life with relationship completion. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I know there's other musical offerings at end of life, but for Room 217, that's what we want to do. So anyway, I didn't even know about that we were going to call it Room 217 at that time. I just knew, like, other families need tools, nurses need tools, people need some help, right? And this was way before, streaming music platforms and all that kind of stuff. This was in the early 2000s. So that's what we did. I mean, I worked with some focus groups of experts, palliative doctors, nurses, some music therapists, and family caregivers, and just tried to get this model of slowing the music down. I'll maybe give you an example. Take a familiar song. Let's take this one, like Elton John's Your Song. That would be probably about the tempo he would sing it at, or the speed he sings it at. And we slow it down to 60 beats per minute, and training with resting heart rate. So, you can sort of figure that from a clock with a second hand, it's about that speed. It's not absolutely exact, but we slow it down sort of to this and keep it very open. And it might be a piano, cello, it might be a voice, a flute, a guitar, very gentle. And so that's how I sort of started in this work. I'm just telling you my whole story here and how we got here. So I started doing that in the mid-2000s and sort of trucked around to every provincial palliative care conference in Canada there was, with this growing collection of albums. We now have 24. And people were so interested. I couldn't get over it. I'd usually do a workshop with it. And of course, I was learning as I was going too, in terms of how to express it more scientifically, more, in some cases, more clinically, that sort of thing. Because I'm not a clinician. I'm not a music therapist. I'm a music educator, but still was able to express, some of the research and all that sort of thing. And you know what? I just was gobsmacked at the interest in this. People would say to me, I've been doing that for years and now I know why it works. Now I know why, right? And so all of a sudden we sort of went, wow, there really is a need. Like that first question about, do caregivers really know about this? So what we did, Rob and I, my husband and I, started a not-for-profit and named it Room 217 in honor of the room where my dad died. And that's how we started in 2009, started with the foundation. But it's not just about making tools. It's actually, there's sort of three main parts to it. One is creating tools. So we have designed music resources for palliative care, for dementia care, for music conversations, as well as we have some very designed videos for reminiscence. And so all of those tools are available in physical copies for family caregivers, well, let's just say for paid and unpaid caregivers. And we've also, through the pandemic, put it onto an app, which is available in Canada, the US, and the UK. The app is called Music Care Connect. So all of those resources are available. We also have, with my background, this makes sense, we have a whole educational component called Music Care Learn, and we have 8 various programs. So we have standardized training. We have our conference, actually. We have a national conference once a year. It's coming up at the end of this next month. I'll say it's coming up in October. And we have just a number of webinars, skills days, all kinds of opportunities for people to learn. And just in the last year or two, we've started a certification program for individuals, but also for organizations who may want to become music care certified, really recognizing music care delivery within their organization. So, wow, what a story, eh? Like from the classroom to a classroom now, that's not, like it's just a different classroom, I sort of see it as, and using music right the way through. And I think for me, it's a way I've made meaning of Dad's death too. I think that's been a really important part for me as a family caregiver. So, but I've got to also say, it's not like I had a crystal ball and knew it was all coming. I think it just started from this authentic place of 2 real questions and chasing the answers.
Isn't that the way some of the best ideas flow and some of the best work is grown? I love that. So I have several things I want to touch back on. So I want to ask you, so when you and your siblings were there with your dad in room 217 when he was dying, and he sang with you. Do you remember what song it was?
Definitely for Dad, it was hymns. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Christian hymns. But you know what? Like, we all couldn't remember the words necessarily. I mean, we kind of collectively did. But it actually, you know what, Helen, it didn't matter. And this is why this was such a good teacher for me, because what I found was more important was that we were present. That was the first thing, that we were all together and really present. And the actual technical performance, even though I'm a musician, the technical performance, like it wouldn't have won America's Got Talent. Let's put it that way. Because the actual technical performance is quite secondary to it being expressed, kind of authentically, really matching what was going on with Dad. So, you know, he was having struggle breathing. So, I mean, of course, we weren't trying to do anything too quickly. We just let things happen, and we would hum. We did a lot of humming, actually.
You know, it's funny you should say that, because I was just thinking, you said the technical skill wouldn't necessarily matter. You still get the same effects. There's still the same benefits. It's same situation as if a mother is humming to a child. When you rock your babies, a lot of times we hum or we sing. And the technical skill, it may not be that great, but it's still soothing. You get the psychological, the emotional benefits, and then you get the physiological benefits, which you talked about as well. You know, talking about the heart rate and the rate of the music.
Well, it's interesting. A couple of days ago, I was speaking with a group of hospice volunteers, and, you know, 4 or 5 of them, it's actually a hospice that does a lot of music. Volunteers do a lot of music, but a few of them really don't feel very confident, and just said, you know, if I was dying, I wouldn't want somebody who sings out of tune, you know, singing to me. Which is a good point.
It makes sense.
And that's why I'm sort of saying, you know, I want to be careful how I say this, because I am a musician first, but for me, it's about priority, right? And what we teach people who may or may not feel or perceive they're musical or you know, that sort of thing, is there are some really simple things you can do. Like, I would even say breathing is an actual musical activity, is paying attention to your breath and what's happening. And if you feel like you really can't sing, or you don't want to sing, or you think you ruined it, whatever your perception is, I would say then pay attention to your breath. And see if you can do any kind of syncing up or entrainment with breath, seeing if you can be present through your breath. And that might even just be making your breath louder, like, so that the person is aware that another human is in the room, right?
Absolutely.
That's the easiest thing we could do. The second thing would be to hum. And that, you know, that's very disarming for people that are scared, just to be able to just wet your lips and you could even do something as simple as this. One note, a single note. Again, a very strong presence. You don't have to be loud. And of course, you always want to be watching and paying attention to what happens, because music's dynamic. It's not like they're taking a pill or a shot of something. Like, if it's too loud, you want to make it softer. If it's too soft, you might want to make it louder. It's a dynamic, and you've got to watch how it's impacting the person. If they're plugging their ears, maybe you do stop.
Right.
You know, or if they're turning their head, it's one of those things you've got to pay real attention to. But humming is easy. You could do that one note, or you could even go like this. 3 notes is even wonderful if you go down like this. 3, 2, 1, like that. It's very, very powerful. And then if you feel a little bit more confident, you could sing that, or sing a lullaby, or hum a lullaby. I love Lean on Me. Lean on me. Lean on me. You don't even have to do the whole song. Just that one phrase is so powerful, right? And of course, that depends if somebody's imminently dying, or it depends on where they're at sort of in the trajectory of things. But yeah, I hope I answered your question, because I'm going, what was your question again?
No, there's so many different things to talk about. I think the key is presence. The key is presence. And I'm with you. We want to be clear. This isn't appropriate for every patient. There are patients who cannot tolerate the auditory stimulation for whatever reason. They need stillness and quiet. It's kind of like touch. Not everybody enjoys touch. Some patients find touch painful, or it causes them to be more agitated. So it always has to be moderated according to whatever seems to suit the patient the best. But I know that from being at the bedside with other people, that humming and singing, even if it's like what you're saying, the lean on me, it's almost like a meditative mantra that's being sung or chanted.
Thanks for saying that, because I forget which album it's on. I think it's called Spirit Wings, but we did that exactly. We did like this little chant. Peace, my child. It's 3 notes, and it repeats and repeats. And again, you have to pay attention to what's happening in front of you. But I just used that very recently, and the person, it was a physical letdown. Like they just released. It was so powerful, but so gentle, right? You could see them just letting go. And I'm not saying they were dying. I'm just saying they were agitated. So it really helped them just to sort of release that agitation.
The Heart of Hospice is proud to feature this episode's sponsor, the Death Deck, the game and conversation tool that's changing the way we talk about life's most profound subject, death. Featuring 112 cards with multiple choice and open-ended questions, the Death Deck sparks lively discussions whether you're with your partner, your family, or a group of friends. The Death Deck can also be used at conferences or work gatherings as a creative icebreaker. It's easy to hand-select the questions that fit best with your audience. People are also gathering in breweries and their communities to host Death Over Drafts events, using the Death Deck to engage participants in conversations about death and dying. The Death Deck now features a new product, the EOL Deck, or End of Life Deck. The EOL Deck has softer language designed for individuals who may be approaching end of life. Both decks educate the participants on topics related to hospice and palliative care services, death doulas, green disposition, and end-of-life options. For a 20% discount, use the code HOSPICE20 at checkout. Visit thedeathdeck.com to order your decks today. It's time to start the conversation.
There's such incredible effects of music across the board when we do life review with patients to reminisce, look at regrets, events, what you've done, who you loved, where you've been, things like that. Music, what is that? It's called a reminiscence bump, with this time period in their younger years where for most people there are very, very strong, easily accessed memories related to the music of that era for them. So music is oftentimes reflective. And do you ever find that sometimes music is a little bit painful for people at end of life? Because reflection doesn't always mean happy memories. Reflection also includes things that were traumatic or triggering.
Yeah, well, the thing about music is it's absolutely linked to our stories. And so what that means, sort of even from a neuroscientific perspective, if it's linked that deeply into our memories, then it would stand to reason that music could trigger.
Yeah. Right?
And so musical choices are pretty important. How do you pick, especially if somebody maybe can't tell you the song?
How do you choose?
I mean, families may know, and there are sort of some standard songs you can kind of use. I find that Hallelujah, the Leonard Cohen, just even the chorus, is just a nice kind of like. Often people were, it's sort of neither here nor there. It's sort
of neutral, yeah.
Right, but back to this whole part of it being linked to our stories. That's what makes it maybe so powerful, because music can reach into every part of us. All the parts of our humanness, our spirituality, our emotional life, our when we're thinking about sort of our relationships and ourselves as social beings, the biological aspects which you've already referred to, like breath and pain and all of that sort of thing, as well as our cognitive, right? Music can really help with cognitive stimulation and cognitive reserve. So I think there's a number of reasons why it's powerful, but one is because it reaches into every part of our domain, human domains, our humanness. I think another reason is because it's so intrinsically linked to our narrative and our stories. I think it's also, for me, it's just so expressive. And I've got my keyboard set up, so, because I thought if there was an opportunity, I would sing a couple of things. Maybe the first one I'll sing is something that a friend of mine, who actually is a palliative music therapist, she was doing her PhD in the whole notion of relationship completion, the Ira Byock model of what's so powerfully needed at end of life to close a relationship well.
Yes.
I love you. Thank you. Some sort of, if there's something unfinished.
Yeah.
Like
I forgive you.
Yeah.
Will you
Or
forgive me? And goodbye.
And goodbye.
Yeah.
So this is what she had, she worked in a palliative unit at a large hospital in Toronto, and I'm sharing this. I've got her permission to share this. It's in her book. Anyway, but this is one of the stories she told in her book about Peter, who was a 63-year-old male dying of prostate cancer. And he'd battled alcoholism for a large part of his adult life. He was divorced and estranged. And 3 years prior to his admission, and 63 is still pretty young, right? He actually wanted to change the direction of his life. So he joined AA and became sober, and then he started going to a church. And there were 3 people at the church that had sort of befriended him. And now they were sort of all he had as he was dying. So my colleague actually helped him write a song to say goodbye and thank you to these 3 friends. Now, he wasn't a singer-songwriter. It's not like that. She has the skills to help him. So they used the song Leaving on a Jet Plane. And I'll just sing a little bit of it. But this is what Peter expressed to his 3 friends. All my bags are packed. I'm afraid it's time to go. I feel so afraid to leave all alone. I hope I'll encounter a better place on the other side. What have I done to leave my mark? Who will remember me when I'm dead? These questions burn and give me no peace of mind. So goodbye, Jill, Betty, and Scott. I thank you for all the kindness you've shown. You are the best 3 friends a person could ever know. And I'm leaving on a jet plane. Please think of me sometime again. I know I'll think of you. And there's another verse. So I don't know that he actually sang it. I think she sang it, but he was there and the 3 friends were in the room.
Yeah. It's a love letter. It's a love letter.
Totally, but it helped him really express in a way that I think just connected all 5 of them in the room.
Yeah. And sometimes those things, I think, are easier to say with music or through music than it is to actually speak the words.
That's exactly right. So music becomes almost like an iconic representation. It's what I said about my mom, right? Like, she wasn't going to sing, but Wind Beneath My Wings became that for her. They were the words she needed and wanted to say. So, you want to have some songs for especially if there are volunteer hospice volunteers who want to integrate music into your practice. Have some songs that have those messages in your toolkit, ready to go. And again, notice it wasn't super complicated, right? I didn't even have an instrument. I just sang with my voice.
Right.
Right.
So if you were going to coach or teach hospice people, all the different disciplines, about how to incorporate music, so we do a lot of, in Texas, we do a lot of rural hospice. It's hard to get people, people like you who have these gifts. That's not accessible to a lot of our hospice agencies. And so to a lot of people out in the community, those enriched pieces aren't available. So if you were going to teach a hospice team and say, if you want to integrate music into the care of your patients, here's how you could do it. How would you tell them to do that? Because these aren't people they don't have a lot of time. They don't have access to maybe musicians and singers and things like that. And maybe they don't have time to sit at the bedside and help somebody compose something. How can just the core team of hospice integrate music into what they're doing when they have a patient who's dying?
Yeah, well, we've already talked about a couple of ways. I think the breath, I think the humming is really good. I always tell people, have a song. I call it the one song. Have your one song that you could use that you feel comfortable with, and it doesn't have to be the whole thing. For me, it's Lean on Me. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. Like, you don't even need more than that, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever it is that you could use. We also encourage people to have a music care kit. And it could be as simple as an egg shaker, a rain stick, an ocean drum. I've got actually a couple of those instruments right here. Like an ocean drum. So this is an ocean drum. And
Oh, wow.
it's quite a beautiful, relaxing. You could use a sound bowl, a kalimba. There's lots of instruments that are very portable that you can put in your purse.
Mm-hmm. And very simple to use.
And you don't need lessons on them.
Right. All you were doing with the ocean drum was just tilting it back and forth.
Right? It might take you 30 seconds to get coordinated on that.
Right. But there's no show to it. You're just stimulating the sound.
This is a beautiful instrument. I love this instrument. It's called a kalimba.
Oh, I wish people could see this. We don't capture the video, but it is interesting. So it's a block with metal bands.
Right, of different lengths. And so it sounds like this.
Interesting.
And you just play it with your thumbs, and there's no real right or, well, there probably technically is, but it's an African instrument, and so you could make it melodic if you want to, but just those random pitches sound beautiful and gentle, right?
Yeah.
Again, you're creating an ambience in the room. Certainly, we've talked about playlists. You asked me right off the top what my playlist might be. I think if you're with a loved one or with a client, if you've been able to sort of get that playlist put together, that would be fantastic. The other piece that we encourage are musical conversations. But again, that really depends where a person's at, whether they can actually have those kinds of conversations, because that can take a bit of energy.
But Bev, so clarify that for me. What is a musical conversation? Right.
So it's more about using music to actually access what's happening or what's going on. So it might be to get to know somebody and their story. So it might be a question like, what's a significant song in your life?
Yeah.
Not what's your favorite song. Your favorite song isn't that helpful of a question, to be honest. What's a significant song? Because when you ask that, somebody will probably say something, a song that might have been like a first dance song or something that has a strong memory attached to it. And so that what then can happen is the music can open up that conversation. And so if you're talking to somebody who might be scared of what's happening, or, if they can begin by opening up their story through something like a song that again, doesn't make them feel like they're in a therapy chair. They're just
Right.
having a normal conversation about you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just chatting.
But you can get at story, you can get at those deeper feelings often. We also say to people, volunteers in particular, and it links back to what you said before, music is so powerful, it can trigger both happy and painful memories.
Yes.
And we always tell people don't be afraid of that, because that's actually quite a healthy thing, or it can be. Just be sure you have a backup person. If you get into something that is beyond your scope, which can happen with music, I've seen that happen before, and it's beyond my scope. I'm not always sure what to do with it, because it's not, I'm not trained as a psychotherapist or as a counselor or a musician. And an intuitive one, but there's some stuff that goes beyond what I could handle. So just, you have to have, who would I call? Who would I let know this has happened? Who can follow up? Because music actually is that powerful, but it can get to even those sort of trauma repressed places, and really open it up. So I tell people not to be afraid of that. Be aware of it. Don't be afraid of it, but be sure you've got somebody that you can call who could help with whatever opens up.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing to note, because we do have people on the team, on a hospice team, that work with that specifically. Our social workers and our chaplains, that's exactly what they do. They are counselors. They are grief support. They are bereavement support. That's exactly what they do. So if we find that we have created, the music has created this response, because it's not anybody's fault. I don't want to say, oh, look what you've done to this patient. Because I firmly believe that when we speak with kindness and truth and compassion, we haven't hurt our patients. We haven't said the wrong thing. We may trigger a response in them, but hospice professionals, end-of-life workers are there with those skills to help them manage those memories and those emotions that come up. So if we were to trigger something like that, or the music triggered something like that, we would be making a call to the social worker for that patient, to the chaplain for that patient, so that they could address. Those are our psychosocial, emotional health professionals.
If it does trigger some sort of distress response, I mean, you really do need to do exactly what you just said. It's just, and yet you're also not, like, as I said before, you've really got to pay attention to what's happening, right? Because it's so powerful. I think the other thing, we haven't really talked about sort of the full trajectory, but this is another powerful thing about music. And I see this a lot in dementia. I mean, I see it in the dying trajectory anyway, but particularly with dementia, because a song can really take you right through the whole process. The music can take you right through the whole trajectory, right? But let's think beyond dementia. Let's just think about that. But I think music is really powerful in aftercare as well, right? So we've talked about sort of maybe at bedside when volunteers are sitting at bedside with somebody, but I think it can also be really powerful in the grief process. I know for me personally, with the diagnosis in terms of our son, there was a lot for us to process, and as you know, and with death acceptance. I mean, I'm not saying it's that this is a death acceptance one, but there's an acceptance piece. So it takes some time when there's significant loss, right?
Yes.
So for me personally, I tend to go to music and express musically what I'm feeling. And sometimes some of the songs I write are more universal, and people can take them and use them for their own grief. And I'm going to share a song that I wrote. This has been recorded. I did this with my friend who produced the album. So it sounds a little bit different on the album, but this is just a simple sort of acoustic unplugged version of it. But this was really an important song for me as a caregiver. This was actually self-care for me as a caregiver. And everybody does that in their own way, but for me it was like this. So this is a song that is called What Comes After Grief. And for me, what happened is the music became like a container it was a place I could actually, as we were accepting what was going on, and this happened I wrote the song some months after, I could put it there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, set it down a little bit.
So it's called What Comes After Grief. What comes after grief? Will tomorrow ever come? What comes after grief? Does the journey never end? Roll away, roll the stone away. What comes after grief? Does it always feel the same? What comes after grief? Oh, your absence is so near. Roll away, roll the stone away. Roll away, roll the stone away. Sorrow friend, come and walk with me. Sorrow friend, come and talk with me. Grace disguised, give me wider eyes. Sorrow friend, come and walk with me. Sorrow friend, come and talk with me. Wind is out of breath, the storm subsides. And we do some instrumental, and there's a bit of a production to it, but that's the basic song. That was a song for me that I wrote it in a moment of time, after a moment of time of accepting loss, quite difficult loss actually. I wrote it, and now I can go back to that. I don't know how to explain it other than it feels like it like contained a lot of grief for me in that song. And now when I sing it, like I don't tend to get overly emotional when I sing it. It helped me put my emotions there.
Yeah, it feels different now.
Yep. So that's I mean, I can write songs, and not everybody can. But again, going back to the song could be your icon. Like that song that I wrote might help somebody, right?
Absolutely.
Just as other songs have helped me that other people have written. So I think there's, I don't know, this whole thing about music being expressive is super important, in terms of the power of it at end of life.
Yeah. So I want to touch on something. Now that I've finished crying, I mean, that's touching. You don't have to have a recent loss. I'm a sympathy crier.
Oh.
I'm an empathic crier. So someone else's grief and pain often causes me to overflow. But there's something in the lyrics where you say, roll the stone away, which is a Christian religious reference, I'm assuming, because you are a person of Christian faith. But I think there's also some symbolism there for grief. That stone that blocks, that heaviness that you bear, the weight of grief that holds us after we've had a loss. That's incredibly powerful. And you don't have to be a religious person to feel that power.
And I tried to write the song that way, to be honest, that it could be more universal. So that and just the weight of grief sometimes, and how it blocks you from seeing light and seeing life.
Yes.
It was, to be honest, it definitely has some sort of resurrection overtones for sure. But I was thinking of it more like, almost being caved in with grief because it's so heavy, and just rolling that stone away. Yeah. So good catch. Yeah, good catch on that. But I find that powerful songs are often quite universal.
Yes.
Because they capture the human themes.
Well, grief is a human theme.
You got it.
It's a shared experience, and it should be a shared experience. That's kind of how we're created, how we're made, and how we're wired. Beautiful. Bev, tell me how my listeners can connect with you, access Music Care, and all the different pieces that you've got, the app and the learning. How can we find your work?
Yeah, so go to musiccare.org. That's our website. In terms of, we've got a store on there. If you're not kind of into the digital world and streaming and that sort of thing, we still sell physical copies of every resource that we've made. And so you can go on and look at that. But as I said, the app is available from Google Play or from the Apple store. It's called Music Care Connect. In terms of our education, we do our standardized training now because of COVID. We've actually, it's synchronous, but we do it online. So anybody could access it. And we actually have level 1 training coming up in October 17, 18, 2023. But they're coming all the time. So if this doesn't work, I don't even know when this is being broadcast, but if that doesn't work, there's more coming up. We have our Music Care Conference, which is just a beautiful one-day. It's just such a filling of inspiration and information, because we really believe in telling the story both quantitatively and qualitatively. So, right. We have a research track, but we have family caregivers. There's something for everybody at that. That's October 27th, 2023. And again, it's going to be hybrid, or you can fly to Ottawa.
Is that an annual conference, Beth?
It is. And this is our 18th. We've done several in the UK as well. We've never done one in the US yet. I say yet because maybe we will one day, but you can access it from anywhere in the world, because there'll be a hybrid option. And then we also have our certification, which again, you'll find online. So musiccare.org. If you want to hear any of my own personal music, because it's quite separate, right? Room 217 is its own organization. We're a not-for-profit Canadian registered charity. It's got a staff of people. It's got a board of directors. But my own personal music, I just actually, it's funny, I couldn't write for 5 years, basically. I could journal, but I couldn't actually write music when our son became ill. And I kind of had this unusual experience during COVID where it's almost like the dam burst, and the songs just rolled out. I wrote 40 songs in 6 months. I mean, it's not how I do my writing. I do writing out of life and I process, but it was just a gush. And so I've taken 14 of those songs about hope and put them on an album called Hope Seeds, and that just released in June. And so those songs, you can go to my website, bevfoster.com, or you can find me on YouTube or Spotify or any of those songs. The song I sang, What Comes After Grief, is on there. And just want to get that message out. I think it's hopefully the songs are pretty balanced though, and pretty real and pretty human, in terms of really accessing hope, because I don't find it the easiest. Personally, I don't find it the easiest thing to access when you're going through something really, really challenging. It's a bit of work, and it's all about acceptance. It's all about letting go. It's all about surrender. All of those great things, which would be great fodder for yet another time when we chat, Helen. But Hope Seeds is a collection of 14 songs that I think could really help people if they're struggling with hope.
Lovely. Bev, you have really, you've made my day. Your music is amazing. The way you're creating meaning, your dad would be so proud of what you're doing. He would be so proud.
Yeah, he was a really successful businessman, and there's just days I wish he was still here, because I think he'd be so interested in helping with it. But then you have to go, it's such an integral part of the story. The fact that he's not here, I don't think I would be doing this, to be honest.
Yeah, you've created meaning. Thank you so much, Bev. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks, Helen.
So you got to hear how Bev has created meaning, and she knows it. She can see it looking back. She understands the great meaning that she's created with music following the death of her dad. and her mom sitting with her grandmother listening to music, not singing. So it just goes to show you don't have to be able to sing, and listening to that music as her own mother were dying. Her dad singing along with his kids and his wife as he was dying is incredibly powerful. Music that's familiar to us is powerful. It has great power for us, our emotions and our mentality, who we are. Bev believes that music can fill a space, which includes time in the environment when you're waiting. And we all know what it's like to wait in those sterile places where people typically die, right? That hospital room that's bare except for the medical equipment, that facility where there's very little personal identity in the things that are there. So music can help to fill that time that you're waiting and to fill that environment to create a sacred space. Room 217 was the room where her father died. So that's where the name for the nonprofit foundation came from. And it's how Bev finds meaning after her father's death. So they also have an app called Music Care Connect that provides content especially for caregiving and improving quality of life for patients using music. Bev thinks, she knows and believes that music is linked to our stories. Very true. Very true. She offers ideas on ways that care teams can provide music interventions, including simple musical instruments, which is super important because not all of us have a lot of music ability. I can carry a tune and I can play a piano as long as there's nobody listening. But other than that, I would have to have a very simple musical instrument. I got to tell you, I was blown away by the ocean drum that she had. So to describe it for listeners, since you guys can't see it, it was literally a ring with a bottom, like a drum skin, and one on the top as well. It was sort of transparent. You could see down inside it. And then these beads or little balls inside, and all she did was tilt it back and forth, and it simulates the sound of the ocean. It was pretty amazing. I'd never seen one of those before, so check out their website, musiccare.org, and you'll be able to access all those different things. Check out their app, Music Care Connect. Check out their annual conference. All of that's on the website, and you'll be able to find Bev. And there's also a link to her website with her personal music as well. So check it out. Be sure to catch the next episode of the Heart of Hospice podcast. You can find more episodes on theheartofhospice.com. And don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can connect with the Heart of Hospice on Facebook and Instagram, and send your questions or comments to me by email to helen@theheartofhospice.com. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.